Hey folks, this is Carl Laters and we're over here at the Mount Juliet Library. And what we're going to do today is we're going to take a look at the election of 2016. Now if you're old enough, you might remember watching the results coming in, and finally the results were Hillary Clinton had 65.8 million votes, Donald Trump had 62.9 million votes, and of course the end result is Donald Trump wins. Well, wait a second. That doesn't make any sense. Hillary had more votes than Donald did. No, not really, because when you count the electoral votes, Donald Trump had 306 electoral votes to Hillary's 232 electoral votes. You see that over there in big red print, folks? Electoral votes determine who the next president is going to be. But Ms. Laters, how can that be? That's what we're going to look at today. We're going to take a look at the first of a three-part series about the Electoral College. Part one is going to be how the Electoral College works. And to understand how the Electoral College works, we have to go back to the United States Constitution, which created the method in which the President and Vice President of the United States is going to be elected. Now, if you're looking for a big building that says on it, Electoral College, it's going to take you a long time because there's no such thing as that. The Electoral College, the way we understand it, was created by the Constitution. Ironically, the terms Electoral College don't appear anywhere in the Constitution. That's a term that would be developed later on. So in the Constitution, Article 2, Section 1 says, each state shall appoint in such a manner as the legislative thereof may direct a number of electors equal to the whole number of senators and representatives which the state may be entitled to in Congress. What that means is that each state is going to get a series of electors that's going to be equal to the number of senators plus the number of representatives. That means California is going to get a lot of electors. Wyoming is only going to get 3. Why 3? Because Wyoming is entitled to 2 senators, and based on their population, they only get 1 representative. That's why Wyoming only has 3 electoral votes. And the most important part, the person receiving the greatest number of electoral votes shall become the President of the United States. Now, to understand this, we're going to have to go over a couple of terms. The first term is what we call popular vote. Those are the votes that you and I cast when we go into the election booth and we cast our vote, or we mail in a vote, whatever the process may happen to be. The votes that you and I cast, that's going to be popular vote. And 99 out of 100 times, that's the only thing that you need to be concerned about. However, whenever we're talking about presidential elections, then we have to consider another vote, and that's called the electoral vote. That's an example of the electoral vote that you see from the state of Maryland. The electoral votes are the votes that the electors are going to cast to determine who the next president and vice president of the United States is going to be. Okay, in trying to figure out a way to explain it, I found that the simplest way is easiest. So let's go this way. The people elect the electors, and then the electors elect the President of the United States. It's as simple as all that. In fact, very often when you go into a ballot booth and you go to vote, it very often just says the name of the presidents, the presidential candidates that are running. Other states will say the electors of Donald Trump, the electors of Joseph Biden. That's really who you're voting for. You're voting for the electors. Just like in the House of Representatives, the amount of electors is going to be determined based upon the population of the state. That's the reason why California has 55 electors, Tennessee only has 11 electors. What's going to happen at the beginning of each particular election, you're going to see that the candidates are going to be running towards the biggest states to get the greatest amount of electoral votes that they possibly can. But you're going to hear another term, that's going to be called a swing state. There are certain states that each candidate can count on winning, but the swing states, those are going to be the states that are not clearly defined. That's going to determine who the next president is going to be. That's the reason why states like North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, states like that, which are not clearly red or not clearly blue, those are going to determine who the next president is going to be. Now, to understand why we have this Electoral College, we have to go back and understand when the Electoral College was created. It was created with the Constitution in 1787. What was America like in 1787? Population, 4 billion. The vast majority of the population lived in the farming areas, about 96%. The vast majority were uneducated, meaning that they did not have a simple education. Many of them did not have the ability to read and write. There was no mass media the way we understand it today. The definition of the mass media was only the big urban areas like New York, Philadelphia, Boston, they had daily papers. The rest of the country had newspapers that were published weekly, bi-weekly, or in some cases, monthly. Today, we're used to getting information, bam, like that. If something happens at the other side of the world, we know about it almost instantaneously. Whereas back then, communications were measured in units of days, weeks, and sometimes months. And finally, sectionalism was very strong. People did not think of themselves as being Americans. They thought of themselves as being Virginians, New Yorkers. If Tennessee was a state, we would have been Tennesseans. The fear was that if they just had an election based upon popular vote only, it was going to take too long to count. Since the vast majority of them were uneducated, they wouldn't be able to read about what these candidates actually feel. Even back then, there was a fear of the big cities, that the big cities would eventually take control of the electoral process, and many other people's votes were not going to be important. All of this goes back to the Constitution, 1787, the way it was written. In order to get people to approve or ratify the Constitution, some of the key writers of the Constitution, guys like John Jay, James Madison, and Alexander Hamilton, they wrote a series of documents trying to get the people to accept and understand what the Constitution was really all about. This collection of documents is going to become known as the Federalist Papers. In Federalist Paper number 68, Alexander Hamilton talks about the electoral process for the President of the United States, and after he's done explaining it, he then summarizes it this way: in this manner of election, confusion and tumult will be eliminated. Well, tell me, Mr. President, was it really as simple as all that? Did it work? Sorry, Forrest, you're going to have to wait till next week to find out if that's really true. Tune in for part 2 of the Electoral College. Thanks, guys.